Awesome. I believe that we're recording. Hello and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to see you all. This is a fantastic webinar. We are chatting monthly donations today with the wonderful Graham Binning, who is on the line with me. Hello, Graham.
Oh.
I do have a couple of housekeeping items for everyone who is on the call today and would be coming to future webinars. If you're watching this recording, this is great to know for the future. If you are watching this live, we do have a Q&A option today. So you can chat at the top where it says Q&A, add your questions about monthly giving for our expert, and hopefully we'll be able to ask them during the webinar. Of course, we'll always have important contact information for you if you want to get in touch with us afterwards to elaborate on that. If you need any support during this webinar, so maybe there's an audio or video issue, or maybe someone said the name of a website, you didn't quite catch it and you'd like us to repeat it, please go ahead and chat in the comments box where you can also chat back and forth to each other. So that's really fun. We love for you guys to have a great sense of community. So if you don't have a formalized question, you can always chat in the chat box there. Okay, and the biggest question I always get asked, and I did get your emails just before this webinar, is will this recording be shared? And yes, it absolutely will be, barring any technical issues. About 24 hours after we're done here, we will be sending you the recording, and I know that you love to share that with your team members, so you will have that. And one more thing, I really just want to thank everybody today. I know that we are very busy, and a lot of us are in areas that are still in lockdown. So for you to give us your time today to come to a webinar and do some professional development and put time our way, we really appreciate that. And we also want to honor that and make sure that you get really great value out of this session today. So that's our number one goal, is that you have actionable items that you can take home to your team and you can think about. And on that note, I'm really happy to introduce Graham Binning, the CEO of Fundraising Direct. He is our expert today. He is described as a master chatterbox, which I think is fantastic. He has it on his LinkedIn profile also, exactly what you want in a webinar guest. And of course, he is well known as a fundraising problem solver. Graham has run fundraising operations in 4 different countries, currently manages the Fundraising Direct agency, where he specializes in monthly giving, mobile giving, another great thing to ask him about, and fundraising strategy. And my favorite piece of trivia about Graham is that his dog has the most wonderful name, Bernadette. Will Bernadette be at all making an appearance on this webinar?
You never know. I mean, I'm in the basement, and so she only comes down here in the evenings generally, but we can see her wandering past in the background maybe.
Now, before I hand over the controls here, I just want everybody on the call to sort of understand what the webinar format will be like. So now that we're a few months into the changed fundraising landscape with the pandemic, a lot of our plans for 2020 were changed, adjusted, or outright canceled. So we've had a lot of disruption of our programs and plans for the year. So what I found a lot of people tell me is really valuable is when we get a good sense of what's going on with our donors and supporters right now. So we are going to start this webinar with some data points that Graham has collected about how these programs are performing, and really importantly, the results of a donor survey. So we can find out how donors and supporters are feeling about charity, feeling about monthly giving. And then after that, we're going to preload our discussion with some actionable tips about how to boost your fundraising, monthly giving. And those are the sorts of details that I know I'm asked about frequently, and so is Graham. So we thought it would be great to have them at the beginning of the webinar. And then we're going to go into the Q&A where we can be more specific about the things that you want to know. So on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Graham. And by it, I mean the webinar controls. Again, bear with us. We're all becoming Zoom experts, right?
Yeah, hopefully this will go better than a town hall around the other day where I accidentally muted everybody on text and chat. So,
oh, amazing.
It's a good
I
way.
don't know. I would like a universal mute ability, maybe for some of my family members. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't do it on purpose. It's much more accident. Thank you very much for everybody for joining. I want to allow as much time as possible for the Q&A, because I think that's the piece that people will probably get the most out of, because there'll be more specific questions. But what I do want to do, and as Claire mentioned, is really share with you some of the things that we've seen from the fundraising, predominantly on the telephone, with the telephone fundraising that we do for a number of charities, predominantly in Canada at the moment, but also share with you some of the, as Claire mentioned, some of the survey results. And we haven't shared these publicly yet, so you are the first people to see them. What we did is we spoke to a number of the charities that we work on behalf of and said, we really want to know what the landscape looks like, because we are in a very different scenario at the moment with COVID and how COVID relates to and impacts the income that charities are seeing now. And so what we want to do is we get a real sense from existing donors. So these aren't just the general public, so to speak. It's people that are already donating to charities. And so without further ado, I'll bring up the first slide so you can see that. And really what this first slide shows, hopefully you can all see that, is when we were talking to the donors, 94% of them said that they expect to give the same amount now and obviously for the next 3 months to charity. And that for us is a huge learning, because that really does suggest that all of the worries and the concerns that we have, both at our levels and obviously at executive board levels, about do we go out, do we keep fundraising, do we keep talking to people out there about the work that we do, the resounding answer is absolutely yes. This is not the time to be curtailing your activity and to be worried about upsetting people. We are not the audience. And that's, I think, the message, one of the key messages I want you to be going and talking to your board members about, is all of the worries and feelings, most importantly, that we have about whether or not we should be in the market and talking not just about monthly giving, but also just general solicitations. This really stems, you have to look at the data, not just feelings. And the data is resounding in the conclusion that now is absolutely the right time to continue to go out to people. The next part is 74% of people said they're not worried realistically about their finances over the next 3 months and how COVID has impacted that. And again, that will vary across different demographics and different charities. But again, the charities and the charity supporters we were talking to, 3/4 of them were very confident that it wouldn't change things very much. And then the last part is that 80% actually think that not only should charities still be out there, but they should be doing exactly the same activity they were doing pre-COVID, if not more. And I think that's the important part that we were very surprised by, is that bit of, they should be doing more, because people do understand that during this time where there are people, and it is in the news about high unemployment, where there are people that are in situations that need support, charities, a large part of the time, are the ones that actually go and fill the gaps. And that could be anywhere from things like food banks all the way through to responding to emergencies such as house fires, etc. So that kind of behavior from charities, if you stop your fundraising, which arguably is one of the first things you do when you are out there and talking to your supporters, you're sending a message basically that is, we don't need your support. And fundamentally, we are in an emergency situation. A pandemic is an emergency situation. So even if some of you aren't in organizations that deal with what we class as emergencies, like the American Red Cross and the Canadian Red Cross, we are in an emergency financial situation because of some of the impacts that we've seen because of COVID. So the last thing you really need to be doing is making that worse by arguably stopping the outreach. So that was the first. So that was very interesting, these survey results.
I was just going to say that, yeah, that is, did you find that when you bring these results back to the organizations that they were surprised?
We haven't.
When you had pointed out that you are not your donors, I think that's a really important insight, because sometimes we might have one idea about what our donors are thinking, and they tell us, actually, no, we get it. We know that you need support.
Yeah, and through no fault of their own, that is unfortunately a large portion of the issue with boards. Board members, almost by design, tend to be, not the average donor, and so board members will be making decisions and will be saying, I don't think we should continue, or I don't think we should go down this route. And unfortunately, they aren't the audience. They potentially might show some insight into mid-level or major donor behavior. but individual giving program behavior, which is generally where monthly giving comes in, you know, they are absolutely not the audience. And so, you know, it is all of our jobs to be talking to them and to engage with them and say, look, your feelings are genuine and germane, but not for the audience that we're talking about here. So there we are. So the next one is about, and these were just some of the other questions that we had. There was 2 other questions we had in the survey. And it was around about over how do we think that charities are responding? Because we did want to find out what people are thinking about charities. And it was quite a mixed bag, but most people didn't really have an opinion or didn't really know. And that's about 44% of people. But interestingly, about 46% of people said that, you know, charities are handling this well. They are handling it in a cohesive and structured way. And I really put that down to the messaging that there's probably already out there pre-COVID. Because the reality is, by the time we were doing this survey, it hadn't given a huge amount of time for charities to really get a cohesive message out there about what they were doing about COVID. But the 44% to me fundamentally says that we are failing in our communication to supporters, because it's really saying that people are like, I don't know, I don't know how charities are doing. I don't know what the cancer charity that I support down at the local hospital is doing, because we're not talking to them. And if we don't talk to them, it is the classic example of, you know, it's much better to do the wrong thing than it is to do nothing. And I think what's happened is there's been very much a bit of analysis paralysis within organizations to say, well, what do we do? What is the right thing? But even if you're going out to supporters and just saying, we're still here, we're still continuing our work and nothing else, that has a huge impact already, because people are like, oh, right, they're still there. So when I'm looking at, you know, my finances, if I do find myself struggling, oh, well, I've heard from this charity, so I'm not going to, you know, take them off the list and try and save money that way. And I think that is an important message that this particular question to show, is that we're not doing enough to talk to people.
And it really sort of matches with what the stats were that we were seeing from the previous recession in 2007, 2008, where organizations that did pull back on that sort of individual marketing, individual giving, did see a significant dip compared to those that kept communicating throughout that period. So I think that's just really interesting, because we did get AFP's Q1 stats that showed that individual gifts under $250 were up 6% that quarter. So, I mean, that's really where you find individuals giving, right? Not corporations, major gifts, and a lot of that is online. So I think as these stats start coming out, we're starting to see that the pattern is reflected. I guess history repeats itself a little bit.
It does. I mean, you know, that's the thing, is that you can look at any previous economic downturn, and the classic thing that happens is those charities that are out there really giving across a sense of urgency in the work that they're doing and continuing to do has a huge impact on the psychological you know, behavior of supporters, is that you are putting them or putting yourself at the front of mind. It's the same principle behind, you know, we do direct mail pieces that you know, you can put on the fridge. Something's fridge worthy is something we talk about a lot, because if you're opening the fridge every day, you're front and center, and so I think that's important. It's any kind of communication at all, whether it be, you know, very expensive TV, DTV adverts, or whether it's be something as simple as an SMS to say, hello, we're still here. This one was interesting. So this was the final question we asked, which was, what do you know, in essence, we wanted to find out, what do people want to hear about? Is it about COVID, or is it about the work? Because a lot of people were saying, well, we don't want to talk about COVID because we don't want to depress people. A lot of people were saying, well, we want to talk about COVID because we don't want to be tone deaf to the current situation in the market. The answer is both. And I don't think this will be a surprise to some people. It was good to hear, because for me, it's about, you can most certainly talk about COVID, but the reality is it's about everything. It's about potentially how COVID has impacted you, but just giving a nod to the fact that we are in unprecedented times, and things are a little bit different and a little bit, new, but the thing that isn't new is that charities need your support, and that's why we're contacting you today. So the next one is just about what we've seen, and this is predominantly around telephone fundraising, which is one aspect of our work. And some of these we expected. We expected to see if people were stuck in their homes, they would probably be more likely to pick up the phone. What we didn't expect to see is a 40% increase in the number of people that are picking up their phone. I mean, that is a huge, huge difference. And this was measured literally the 3 months of COVID, or I think the 2 months when these numbers were put together, versus the kind of 6 to 12 months before. So it's a huge impact, and that really says to us that people are still picking up the phone, and arguably it means that telephone fundraising, because we've lost some key tenants of fundraising, such as face-to-face, and obviously the event space has been massively impacted. It is important to kind of look at the positive things. And there are some other channels like direct mail and telephone, which have taken, an upswing, which had been arguably going the other way over time, with people being more susceptible to screening calls with the greater prevalence of cell phones in the data. So that was great to see. The other one, which pans back to your point about the AFP stats, is that when we were looking at our conversion campaigns, we saw that not only was an uplift, but it was nearly a 40% increase in the return on investment that charities were seeing. And again, this is the charities that were continuing to fundraise. So that we had a number of charities we were working with, and all across Canada, who, again, that analysis paralysis, the reluctance really to continue fundraising, which I completely understand. And it's not something I'm trying to necessarily say was a bad decision at the time, because at the time we were in uncharted territories. But those organizations that did stay in the market and did stay with a very, very active communication strategy and fundraising strategy benefited massively from that action. And then obviously, when we talk about conversion campaigns, outside of any of the other activity we were doing, we saw an 8% increase in the number of people that were converting to monthly giving as compared to the previous 12 months. So again, that 8%, I wish there was something I could turn on that would automatically increase my conversion rates by 8%. So it was really positive for us. But again, not everybody benefited from that. And I think it's not too late for those charities that are still hesitant or reluctant to maybe to go forward with that project that they've wanted to do for the last 6 months, but understandably they've put it on hold because of the uncertainty. I think now is absolutely the time, because unfortunately COVID will be with us for a fair while yet.
We are, and I really appreciate it. I just want to shout out to our attendees. I'm getting some people chatting to me and chatting to all the attendees that they are starting to see those results themselves with their programs, especially if you've recently unpaused. And if you're a little bit surprised, this is why I love these type of webinars, because this is the kind of information that you can share with your team, share with your executives and your board, and of course talk to other organizations in the space and see how their programs are performing too.
Yeah, I'd love to find out if this is just the charities that we work on behalf of, because it's,
well, according to my LinkedIn, whenever I post about this, I get plenty of comments, so it seems pretty on trend.
Wonderful. Well, that's good, because it does stem from, it all seems to go together. The survey results of what people are saying, the actual results on the phone. Sometimes the surveying will be what people say rather than how they behave. This seems to dovetail quite nicely. So really good to see. Then I wanted to go on to really the kind of 3 tips that Claire mentioned that I want to talk to you all about. Some of you may already be doing these, in which case, absolutely massive pat on the back. They are not rocket science. I'm not giving you anything that's revolutionary. It is all about, at this time especially, doing the basics well. And really the basics start from the initial point where you get a donation or some kind of activity from the supporter. And it's really about sharing the impact of that donation, really going back to them, talk to them about how they've helped in the short term, how that can potentially help in the long term. Long term, the better way that they can support you is obviously talking then as a segue into discussing monthly giving. But the first thing you need to be doing is obviously thanking and stewardship. I gave it to charity during COVID, got an immediate thank you. I was like, brilliant, tick in the box. You know, it doesn't have to be too wordy, it doesn't have to be anything that's you know, that's like War and Peace. A fridge worthy, you know, postcard saying thank you very much for your support. It's really, you know, it's really all you need to do. The example we're using at the moment is email and SMS because they tend to be the cheapest. You know, we know that SMS as a stewardship device has been great as both a pre-engagement and just, you know, reaching out to people very easily. If you want to ask yourself how effective SMS is, answer the question, when did you last ignore a text message? Because
that's a good point. When my phone starts popping off, I'm like, what I'm getting texts?
Yeah, it's very easy. I mean, you know, whether you reply or not is a very different matter, but I guarantee you, you know, I'm sure all of my ex-girlfriends were reading those texts, just deciding not to reply. So, you know, the email, I think, is an incredibly useful tool. You know, we tend to always have discussions about what the kind of open rates are, and I think that's always something about trying to maximize the open rates. But with SMS, it's the other end of the scale. What you'll find is complete 100% engagement. Your opt-out rates will be higher, obvious reasons, because it is such an active channel. And that's why you end up getting a big list of people who are saying, do you know what? Actually, no, SMS isn't the way I want you to contact me. So sharing the impact, very, very important. Do it fast. Don't wait around. You know, when we're talking about both stewardship and conversion, you really want to be taking advantage of the fact that the sooner that you take action from the point of which they took action, the more likely that the reason and the inspiration for them originally giving will be still in their head. And I think that's an important piece that we, especially us, we get so tied up sometimes in the data. And it's about let the data tell the story, let the data tell the story. But you also need to try and break some of the what I'd call industry best learnings in inverted commas, which is that you'll fall into this pattern where the best practice is call them at 3 months. And when I got into fundraising, people were like, you call them at 3 months. That's what you do. I said, well, what happens before that? And what happens after that? So, well, if you're after that, the results, you know, start to drop off. You don't convert as many. And before that, oh, we don't call them before that. Well, have we tested that? Okay, so you test it and we found a peak at 4 to 6 weeks. Great, we found 4 to 6 weeks. What about 2 weeks? Oh, okay, we test that 2 weeks. Oh, wow, okay, what about 24 hours? You let the data tell the story. And we do find sometimes that some audiences are much better 24 hours. In North America, interestingly, as opposed to in the UK predominantly, 24 hours doesn't work as well. We had these preconceived ideas when we first started in North America that it would be similar. There would be similar behaviors between the UK and North America. And it's been very enlightening over the last 10 years to see how different it is, how similar it is in a lot of ways, but how different it is. The 24 hours thing doesn't seem to resonate very well with North Americans, in my experience from the campaigns we've executed. But a 2-week window seems to work very well. So I don't know whether that's after you donate, you want to have a nice little rest period, consider the nice feeling you're getting inside. Again, all hypothesis, I can't prove any of that. What I can prove is that 2-week window can often be an ideal time to get back to those people and say, it's fantastic you gave, you know, hopefully you got your thank you message. Now's the time for us to talk about a different way you can support us.
I think this is such an important insight, especially for people that may not have a really robust or existing monthly giving program. Because I know that when I talk to people in the nonprofit sector who are maybe on the marketing or comm side, or maybe folks who aren't in the nonprofit sector, so don't necessarily have a fundraising experience, they're always a bit surprised to hear that the best candidates for monthly giving are those who have given recently, who've given a one-time gift recently. And there's sort of this idea that, monthly gifts is is something that it takes you got to sort of slowly walk into the pool on that one, instead of just jumping right in. And that's why I always think it's so exciting when I see people running monthly giving campaigns in January and February, right after that big holiday rush in December. I do think that that's definitely something to think about if you guys haven't been thinking about this in terms of your flow with your one-time donors.
Yeah, and just like everything, one sweeping comment or one sweeping statement doesn't cover every single audience. What I would say is that this is a general rule for if you received a cash gift. It's very different if you're doing an engagement piece, for instance, where there's a kind of a hand-raising exercise or a petition. That may vary the perfect time to call them. And that's where I had an old director of mine back in the UK used to say, test, test, and test again. And I think that's the key message that, again, I want to get out to everybody listening, is that you may not know. You can listen to all the experts in the world, but you need to find out, first of all, what your audience, how they perform. But second of all, depending on your approach and your initial acquisition strategy, that will determine where the best time, the optimum time to call people back for conversion. And you'll find that over time. I mean, monthly giving is not a quick fix. It is a long-term sustainable project that you need to be looking at and getting everybody in the organization to buy in. All paths should lead to monthly, and in essence, when I say that, again, it's another one of my sweeping statements, but it really should be that everything eventually leads to monthly, and that means testing approaches, testing timing, and letting the data really set the scene on the tactical side. Okay, let's do it fast. And then the last one is about doing something tangible. We always talk about tangibility with with the clients that we work on behalf of, in the sense of, if you donate $20 a month, what you can actually do is you can pay for 140 mosquito nets, that kind of thing. It's a tangible item. But tangibility is also about something where you are talking about a specific item or fund or project that they're supporting. The big the big negative word within organizations, which I completely understand, is restricted funds. Restricted funds is this wonderfully taboo word that we're not allowed to
Well, you're freaking me out even mentioning it.
Yeah, and I why? Because you can't restrict your organization wholesale to just spending on one particular thing. And the organizations that can do tend to be much bigger, and they do have a specific need in that area. And the examples I'll use is UNICEF have a children and HIV fund, because that is such a big need that they help with, that they're able to set aside money just for that fund. And they can do that, and they have the luxury of doing it. Not every organization has the luxury of doing it. So there are ways in which you can adapt that. And one of the ways is that you pick a specific fund for a relatively short period of time. And this was developed a number of years ago when we launched a kind of 365 product. And that's basically in conjunction with one of our charitable partners, and said, right, we're going to have, this is an emergency situation. And what we did is we called those people up that had responded to that emergency, said, look, this emergency situation isn't going to be fixed overnight. In fact, it's going to be going on for at least a year, if not more. You supported with a gift during the emergency. If you're able to come on board with a monthly gift, so every month your gift for 12 months, 365 days, would be going specifically to that fund. And then after that point, it goes to where the need is greatest. It uplifted the results significantly, and obviously we've pulled some aggregated results, and it's roughly about 32%. That's a huge uplift in your conversion activity just from having a restricted fund for a small period of time. So one of the things that we have been talking about is, experiment with that. See if you could convince your board members and your finance team, most of all, that a restricted fund for a short period of time could help leverage and grow your monthly file. And it's just another tool in your box. But really the message there is making it tangible, because having something that they know their money's going towards really helps supporters understand, and it's not quite such an ephemeral idea to them of supporting you monthly.
That I can see lots of activity in the chat box. Just reminding you guys, if you want to chat to your fellow attendees, choose all attendees so that you guys can discuss back and forth, which is fantastic. And thank you for your questions that are coming in. And I think because I do have a good number of them, and some of them are on the same topic, I'm going to mash some of them together. Those of you that are used to Care 2 webinars know that I like to mash the questions together, because I want to make sure we get as much in as possible. And oh, now Graham, I think that you stopped sharing your screen. Everyone can see me. Yeah, thumbs up. Cool. So would you mind if we go into some questions now, because we've got quite a lot of stuff to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, this is the part I enjoy, because
cool. My first thing I wanted to point out, you said this twice and I thought it was wonderful. You talked about fridge-worthy content. So the kind of content that stands out, that somebody would notice, want to see again, you know, fridge-worthy. When you're doing when you're at the top of the funnel, you're doing acquisition, thinking about a monthly giving campaign. Does it matter what kind of content you use at the very first point of contact with a prospect? This is something that we talk about a lot here at Care 2, because we know we have campaigns in common where we are doing acquisition for organizations that are thinking about converting those new supporters into monthly donors. So when you're first reaching out to them, does the content have to be fridge worthy? Does it have to be mission based? What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, it's mission based. I have a particular aversion to premium models of acquisition, and that's really because we've proven over time that, you know, the initial uplift that you get from doing something that's premium based versus the long-term value you get from mission based acquired donors is substantially different, by almost 5 times when it comes to the conversion to monthly later on down the journey. And as I said, all roads lead to monthly. But as far as the initial content, you know, there's lots of stuff you can do that doesn't necessarily have to explicitly talk about monthly at the beginning. In fact, arguably mission should be the first thing that you're going out with. As the journey starts though, after your initial engagement and you've got that interest and you've educated the supporters on what your mission is, how you're making a difference in the world, it's at that point then you start talking about the best way to support us and the best way long-term to support an organization. Arguably, you know, if you take outside planned giving, really is with a monthly gift. And that's why it's important that initially, if I've got your question right, the first contact should be very much mission-based. Absolutely. It's at that point after that, when you've got them interested, that's when you start mentioning mission. Don't wait for a year and you've got several one-time gifts from them and you're focused on that just that particular aspect, which is the one-time giving. Do it straight away. It doesn't have to be an ask. It could be talking about the importance. It could be an insert into a stewardship piece of how best to support us. There are various different ways of doing it. If all you're doing with monthly is putting the monthly coupon on the back of your one-time giving coupon, that's not a real focus. That's
it's so sad. It's so sad back there.
Yeah, that's the bare minimum. It really isn't an effective strategy. It has to be long-term. It has to be in how you speak to donors. And in every engagement, there's a piece that references a monthly, even if you're not actually asking for one.
We just had a question on this topic about messaging for one-time donors. So you had mentioned, if say you've engaged with them, you've brought them through a donor journey, they've made a one-time donation. What's the type of messaging you can use to invite someone to become a monthly donor. And I used the term invite, which the question included. The question asker used invite because I have noticed some organizations actually doing invitations. We invite you to become a monthly donor. Is there any particular formula that is a best practice, or oh, I think you're going to say test it, right?
I mean, I am. I do tend to say test for a lot of my answers and let the data say. There's no one formula, and that's, I guess, where the skill of really developing a fundraising strategy comes from. Every organization is different. Every audience have their individual differences, and so I can't sit here and say there's one particular answer. I would say though that with the word things like inviting, I don't think the word invite is strong enough. I'll be honest. When it comes to monthly, you need to change how your organization sees monthly giving. It needs to be a key tenet of what you do in every communication where you're talking to supporters, in every way, in every donate button. The number of times that if I have a conversation with somebody in the UK about supporting a charity, they say, oh yeah, I give a monthly gift. They don't say one-time gifts, because charities in the UK have educated supporters that monthly giving is the way you support charities. It's not one-time gifts. Now, we're a long way from that in North America, but it starts with you. It starts with you ensuring that your organization is fully bought into the idea that monthly giving is the way that people support your organization. So inviting people to give sounds like it's an exclusive club, sounds like it's something special. We actually need to turn it on its head. We need to make monthly giving normal. We need to normalize that behavior. And the only way we normalize that behavior is almost making it that you're incredulous. Why would they not support monthly? So it's almost, it should be a given that if somebody gives you a one-time gift, that you start talking about monthly. And if they're surprised, or if they're, why are you asking me about monthly? Oh, I'm sorry. This is the best way you can support us. We really value your support, and really to make it go far, to be sustainable, to make it something that is a reliable source of income. That is where monthly comes in. So you need to educate supporters, and probably in large part members of your board, about how important monthly giving is, because there is a fundamental shift in behavior, but it will only come from charities. It won't come from supporters. If you're expecting supporters to overnight start saying, I want to give to charities in monthly, it's not going to happen. It's going to happen with all of us in the fundraising sector fundamentally changing our behavior. So it's monthly first, and almost, not entirely, almost exclusively monthly. If you've got 20% of your income at the moment coming in from monthly gifts, you've started. You have a monthly program. If you've got 80% of your individual giving income, and I am not talking about major gifts or mid-level or legacy planned giving or events or anything outside that, I'm purely talking about your individual giving program. If 80% of your income is coming from monthly gifts, that's your monthly giving program. That is a monthly giving program. Anything less than around about 70–80%, you've got work to do, because it means people are still behaving in the way that they think is best for you. Because if you don't educate the supporters, nobody else is going to.
I'm starting to hear that that term you used, monthly first organization, quite a lot. And it really does involve a switch up in terms of your organizational approach, right? So it's cross all your departments. So it's crossing marketing, communications, it's crossing digital, annual, all the way down to, you had mentioned earlier, legacy, which of course monthly feeds into legacy. If someone was wanting to go back to their team and make a case for becoming a monthly monthly first organization, what are some structural things that they could change or improve? You mentioned kind of just throwing the monthly option on the back of an envelope is, not the best way to be a monthly first organization. What are some elements of a monthly first org, if you looked at them and went, yep, they're a monthly first org?
I mean, for me, do you mean from a supporters aspect, or if you're going to the board to get them to buy into being monthly?
Yeah, I guess the elements where someone would come into contact with your organization. So through any of your fundraising channels, you sort of your marketing, your communications, all of that. How would I experience a monthly first organization compared to an organization that doesn't think about monthly gifts? Would there be a different experience for me as the donor?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're not focused on monthly, what will happen is you'll probably donate a one-time gift to a charity. You'll probably get a couple of emails, hopefully saying thank you, but also looking to acquire that second gift, because this is a big metric that's always been used in fundraising, is get that second gift. I'll be honest, it's an important metric because we see with conversion activity, if somebody's given 2 gifts, they're much more likely to donate, also to convert to monthly giving. But within that first stream of communications, there should be a reference to monthly. And it could be as simple as when they're clicking on the link to go to a donation page, the first thing they see is monthly rather than one-time gift. It could be that on your monthly thank you, on your thank you letters, you're talking about there's another way to support us, and it's through monthly. All of these little things kind of add up to, and are all part of tactical pieces of the larger strategy, which is about we are now going to be a monthly first organization. So it's not one thing is the answer, but it means that every time I get a communication of some sort, if there's any kind of talk about financial support, that financial support is monthly. It isn't, you can support us now.
That sort of to normalizing it in the eyes of the donor and our whole community, really, in North America.
There is one exception to that.
Oh, yes.
Key exception, and that's in emergency response.
Direct response.
The response absolutely should be one-time gifts. And that is obviously because of the urgency behind the need, the immediate need for support. But interestingly, emergency gifts, those one-time gifts, are fantastic audiences for conversion. You know, and so again, it all feeds to monthly. Everything leads to monthly, and that is only possible if there's a cohesive organizational strategy that we are a monthly first organization.
And speaking of strategy, got a couple questions here about sort of the elements of the ask. Now, we've all taken various psychology courses, you know, we've all kind of looked at some of the research in fundraising, and I am really curious because I do see lots of organizations doing this, which I'm sure attendees have noticed. Should we, in our messaging, say we need to reach a certain number of monthly donors as opposed to we need to reach a certain goal amount? And do things like incentives or premiums, does that help boost conversion rate? The same as sort of saying we need you to join us and we need to get 700 new monthly donors in 30 days or something like that. I guess these are sort of the, do these psychological elements that we hear about a lot really resonate with our donors?
With the target and having a goal, I think that's a very important metric that you can share with the donors. There are a number of organizations in North America. The one that really jumps out to me from relatively recently is Sick Kids. Sick Kids had their whole campaign was 5,000. It was focused around the number. And that was incredibly powerful because people could then visualize, right, to build this extra wing of Sick Kids, we need to get 5,000 donors. So, and that resonated incredibly well, and it was an incredibly successful campaign. They exceeded their targets by over 25%. And I don't think that's in any small part is because they're sharing the goal with the supporters. If you look at their approach across the board, though, they are monthly first. You know, any of their digital advertising, it's become a monthly donor. So it does go hand in hand. You can set a relatively limited goal or time specific goal, as well as becoming monthly first. The two are not mutually exclusive. So I think that was a really good example where they shared their goal. They said, this is how many monthly donors we want to get, and this is what it will be going towards. You know, it's that combination of the tangibility as well as the monthly first aspect, which I absolutely loved when Sick Kids did that.
And sort of on that note, does, and talking about tangibility, does a corporate match help with tangibility?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that you just nodded. We are on video. It's not a podcast, so hopefully folks could see that. And if you were only listening to this, that was a big nod.
Yeah. I mean, matches always work. I don't think I've got an experience of matches not working. I mean, they are. It's like it's an easy way, should we say, to boost your results, and that applies to one-time gifts, and that applies to monthlies. It's across the board. The thing about the matches is generally matches do tend to be one-time gifts because the organization involved to match a monthly gift is much more complex, but it is being done. You know, there are organizations out there that are matching monthly gifts for a period of time. Again, it's that tangibility of, you know, your gift. If you come on board with monthly, your gift will be matched for 6 months or a year or whatever it may be. So those corporate matches are incredibly powerful. I don't think that'll be a surprise to anybody that's seen the difference in responses of a direct mail piece when it's with a match and without. You know, it's night and day. But if you can align those matches and start talking to your corporate donors about matching monthly gifts, so that and this would be a wonderful thing to see, is you say, actually, you know, thank you very much, you know, corporation that supports us. It's great you want to match. We don't really want to match it with one-time gifts, though. What we want to do is we want to match that to monthlies. We want that to be part of the long-term sustainable development and success of our organization, and that comes from from monthlies. So, you know, talk to them and be very open and honest and say, look, we are a monthly first organization. It's fantastic that you're supporting us. We just need it supporting in this particular way.
Annual giving officers, you got to build those relationships with your corporate colleagues. You got to work together, but that's what a monthly first organization is, right?
Absolutely. Everybody's on the same page. Yeah.
I've got a couple questions here about the power of email, which I think is great because I love chatting about email and all digital stuff. We had a question about should we be emailing people about monthly gifts? And then another question about if we're not able to phone folks, what can we do? And would email be the channel that would be effective in that case if you're not able to call people?
Email is, yeah. The problem with taking telephone out of the mix is telephone is the most cost-effective way of converting donors from one activity to another. However, it's not necessarily the be-all and end-all. If you're engaging people through communication, and this is where you need to start thinking of, don't be so channel-centric when you're thinking of things. An email where it talks about, it could be an education piece about monthly and how monthly is important. It could be an SMS about monthly. It could be a direct mail piece about monthly. The fact is, you're talking about monthly. And I think that's the important piece, as opposed to worrying that it's through email or it's through direct mail or it's, you know, I can't do telephone. That's fine. If you can't do telephone, you park that and say, what are the other channels that I am active in, and making sure that the monthly first message goes across those channels. Email is no exception. You will often see, though, with email is that you might be comparing apples to oranges and saying, well, I'm raising more income through email when I ask for a one-time gift, and when I send a monthly out, I get 0.05% of those people turning onto monthly. But that's because you're looking at things tactically. You need to look at the long-term picture. So with those people you're sending a monthly engagement email to, then you follow them up with other activity. And what you're doing is you're setting the foundation for the eventual conversion to monthly giving, whether that be through email or whether that be through another activity. And remember, you know, it takes people anywhere from 7 to 20 times of seeing the same message to take an action. So they may have to see 7 of your monthly emails before they even consider changing their behavior and saying, you know, I'm actually going to support them with a monthly gift.
Yeah, that's why I have so many different pairs of black leggings, because I'm retargeted on Facebook and Instagram so often. But we had a question here from enough about my black leggings. On to, we had a question from an organization that I believe is structured a little bit like child sponsorship organizations, where they do have a lot of monthly donors. So, you know, this is where you're coming in and we want you to sponsor and have the sort of sustainable gift. And so a lot of recurring revenue. And they're asking if it's okay to email monthly donors about one-time gifts. And the reason that I wanted to bring this up is that I've talked to a lot of organizations, and when I say sort of what are your communication best practices with your monthly donors, they say, oh, we don't talk to them at all. We don't want to remind them that they're giving. I have heard that a couple times, and maybe some of the fundraisers on the call have heard that from colleagues, or, you know, in their careers they've heard that. And for those that have the perception that monthly donors shouldn't be contacted very frequently so that they don't stop giving, I don't think that that's probably what would happen. But what's your take on that? Can you ask them for gifts if they're already giving?
Yes, absolutely. And you really should. You know, it's the same principle behind a mid-level program. You know, I get asked the question about mid-level donors, is that, you know, should we include them in the mass-based solicitations? Yeah, unless they've asked not to, they want to hear about what you're doing. But I think the difference is if you're just asking for money, that's the thing. You've got to give them something else. You know, if you're soliciting one-time gifts off your monthly base, that's great. But it needs to come with some compelling information about what your work is going towards. It can't just be, you're a monthly supporter, I'm going to ask you for a cash gift. It has to be, look, as a valuable monthly donor, we wanted to share with you some of the work that we're doing, you know, over here in this particular area. You know, it's projects like this that are so important to us, and that your monthly gifts does help sustain. But obviously the need is always there. The need is still ongoing. And that's why we're asking at this time, you know, would you be able to support with an additional gift of say, you know, maybe a smaller amount? Because that's the thing when I say smaller amount, because for me, when I think of one-time gifts versus monthlies, one-time gifts are small. A monthly gift, it might only be $10, $20 a month, but it's a significant gift in disguise, you know, because it's a long-term value gift. The average value of a monthly donor is 4 to 5 times that of a one-time donor. And that's because there are opportunities for you to also get one-time gifts from those monthly donors. It could be an emergency situation, which is the perfect time, because we know from our experience of running emergency campaigns for some of the large organizations in North America, that we know that during an emergency, your monthly donors are the people you go to, because they're engaged, they're your most loyal, they understand the need, they understand where your work and the money's going. So, you know, if you've got this wonderful monthly first approach, and sponsorship models are exactly the type of activity I'm talking about, there's nothing stopping you, as long as the messaging that you're giving is engaging and is compelling and is encouraging people to continue to support their loyal donor. It's a thank you stewardship as well as a solicitation piece.
I just wanted to read this comment for those who aren't on the live webinar. This is an attendee who says, we've had a lot of monthly donors call and email us about giving an additional donation through COVID-19 without us asking. We're starting to ask them if they'd be willing to do so, and we've seen a wonderful response.
Yep.
So I think that really sort of speaks to what you were saying. I also want to ask about upgrade campaigns. So is this a time that if you have monthly donors, is this a time that you can ask them to increase their gift? I know a lot of people that are running monthly donation programs already have in mind, you know, doing a upgrade campaign. When are those typically planned for, and what's your advice there?
I'll answer that question. I'll just go back to your point about the
Wonderful response. Yes.
Going out, because that's an interesting point, because we, at the beginning of COVID, the immediate first thing we said is, we are in an emergency situation, irrespective of whether you're an emergency response responding charity like the Red Cross. You are in an emergency situation. You could be on the front line. If you're a healthcare foundation, you could be providing absolutely vital services if you're a food bank. But the fundamental thing is, everybody understands, if you are talking to your supporters and saying, look, we're in a tough time. We're all in this together. That's the kind of adage I've always been hearing since COVID started. We're all in this together. We need your support at the moment. And you're already supporting us monthly. We're just asking for a smaller gift to help us through this time. I absolutely think that should happen. I just want to kind of really, really push that forward. But one-time campaigns and emergency campaigns are not just isolated in and aren't just things that emergency responsive charities should be doing. So that's just the one thing. With the upgrade, absolutely. We were in the middle of a very large upgrade for one of our partners, just as COVID and the lockdown really went into effect. And we said to them, look, there's two options here. We either keep calling or we stop calling. We believe that if you stop calling, these people, if nothing else, will all of a sudden not have had any contact with you because the last contact they would have had would have been a year ago. So they won't have heard anything through the particular very interactive forum, which is telephone, anything from you. So we would strongly advise you to keep calling. And in fairness, they're right on board, and they're absolutely the same thinking to us and said, absolutely, let's keep going. And they doubled down. And immediately, almost overnight, upgrade rates went up by 15%. And so I didn't really expect results to go up considerably. I thought they would keep the same and people would understand. But not only did we see more people picking up the phone, we also saw a higher proportion of people upgrading. And so for us, that really sent a very, very loud and clear message that your monthly donors are the most loyal people to your organization. If you are talking to them and you're talking to them very openly and transparently about the situation you're in, how important the work that you're doing is, they will understand and they will resonate. It's very rarely that, the people won't understand. There's a difference between not understanding and not being able to afford it. Those are two very different things. But you have to give your supporters the opportunity to say, do you know what? Actually, I'm struggling at the moment, and I actually can't support you. Because for every one of those people, there are 10 people that are like, yeah, no, we understand, we get it. We'll support more.
I totally agree. It's so important to touch base with what your donors are thinking. Yeah. And it's also good to have
I forgot one thing. It's quite vital. It is a massive attrition preventer. And the first thing you want to be doing right now is, stopping people leaving. Sorry, I forgot that massively vital piece of information.
It's also good for other reasons. Yes, of course. That, and also making sure that you check on expired credit card numbers. I'm so surprised how many organizations don't have a process for that, but just it's easy to make sure that those credit cards are updated with the correct dates, which is always great too. I want to now, I've got one more question for you. Thank you. It's like so close to 2 p.m. Thank you there's quite a lot of activity and we didn't get to every question. So on that note, I do want to throw up your contact details. I'm going to do that now so everybody can share that. Hopefully everyone can see that up on the screen. You can email Graham. Also, you are going to get a recording in your inbox tomorrow, so you'll be able to share all of these details. The last thing I wanted to ask was a question, which I think that this one is a fantastic one, and maybe you get this a lot. How do you determine what, we've all seen giving arrays, right? How do you determine what the best number is to ask for monthly? Okay, I know you're smiling. People might not be able to see it because I'm talking, but you're probably going to say test this. But there's got to be some sort of formula, right? For you to at least have a benchmark. Do you ask for $50 a month? Do you ask for $5? Is it based on one-time gift averages? Let me know.
There is a formula. There is a formula. It's based upon the individual data that you test to see what works and what resonates. If we're working with an organization and we've not worked with them before and we've not worked with them in the past, we generally will look at what their average gift value of their current monthly donors is. And if they've not done any monthly activity, again, I mean, the problem is with this question, it's so complex because there's not one size fits all. There is a formula, but it's based on history, and it's also based on the type of demographic of people you've got, and it's based on your work. You know, if your work needs $1 a day, and $1 a day is the price point, then you need to go in with a 31.44 or 30.44 rather, you know, monthly ask. And so that should be where your first ask is, you know. And so there's a lot that goes into it, and I would advise, if anybody really wants to know the difference, is you should be going to the experts who are doing, either if it's in direct mail or if it's in telephone. You need to talk to the experts and make sure that they're not just doing what you are asking them to do, that there's a two-way process. And most importantly, that you're looking at past behavior, you're looking at industry averages, because it all goes into the pot and into this elusive formula.
I knew you weren't going to just say $15.
Yeah, I wish there was an amount. I mean, I could say $25 first ask, you know. It's not quite as easy as that, unfortunately.
Well, this monthly donations may not be easy. They may be a wonderful challenge and something that we can all do better with in 2020. But this webinar was extremely easy. It was wonderful to chat with you. And everyone, thank you for your participation. I really appreciate all your comments, especially your chats back and forth to each other, as well as your questions. And I know I'm really sorry we didn't get to all of them. So you will have an opportunity, if you want to shoot Graham an email, of course, do that. If you are interested in acquiring new supporters for a monthly donation campaign or for any project that you have in 2020, you can always talk to me at Care2. It's Claire. I got the details there. Or hit me up on LinkedIn, because I love new LinkedIn buddies. And if you are looking for an expert strategist, Graham is your individual. You can hit him up on LinkedIn and email him as well. Really, Graham, I want to thank you so much for joining us and for going a little bit over time with our chat today.
Yeah, no, it was really good fun, Claire. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm going to end the webinar now.